Bonus Share 15. Checking Our Unity. In 2008, practicing the first tradition was our intent as my friend Mark and I visited the Prague group as we invited the Prague group out for coffee after our last meeting there. We had been in the city for the weekend going to several meetings and thought it would be a polite way as visitors from Nice to say goodbye. The Prague tea rooms and cafes are ornate and beautiful places to go out to for coffee. We chose the historical Café Imperial, which, with its beautiful dessert tray, which is inside the Hotel Imperial and located right across the street from the meeting. At the meeting, one man had kept repeating how that day was his 23rd anniversary, although when it came time to go out for coffee, he refused to join us. He just wanted to get recognition and his medallion. This reminds me of Share 44, what happens when you don't go to meetings much, and go to the movies by himself on his anniversary. However, he finally agreed to accept our offer and reluctantly came with the rest of the group to celebrate his own anniversary. As 8 of us sat down, we told him that we were even thinking of going to the movies ourselves after coffee, and we could all go together, thinking of our first tradition. Our common welfare comes first. Personal recovery depends on AA unity. But he soon got up and left to go to an earlier show by himself. Quite adamant he was. So after he left, we turned our attention to the person seated on our left at the table. He was in his 30s, an English businessman, in a gray flannel suit, and still in his first week of sobriety. He had just left the Priory Treatment Center in London for the 3rd time, and was not very serious about staying sober this time either. He told us how his wife and children were back in England, but he was here because he prefers to live with his Czech mistress. After boasting about how he was friends with such and such person, with such and such a villa on the Cap d'Antibes on the French Riviera, he talked about his 3 children. Mark, being a father of 3 himself, urged him to return to his family and make sobriety a priority. He scoffed at the idea. Under the heading of tough love and unity, Mark repeatedly urged him to look twice at the path he'd chosen, saying how he's going to make an orphan out of his 12-year-old son, right when he needs his father the most. The man became humble, and while he was not quite on the verge of tears, it was going that direction, when all of a sudden he noticed a glamorous young couple he recognized from the local country club or cocktail party circuit. He abruptly changed character, stood up, spun around, beamed at them, saying, "How wonderful to see you here," and the old "How are you, darling?" sort of thing. And so off he went. The man with the iron mask, I thought to myself. All of his problems we'd been discussing with him were behind him now. He was back in his own little world again. So much for that attempt at the tradition. Strike 2. But all was not lost. Next to the British man at the table, there was a young American guy who had been sitting and listening attentively. He had gotten sober 7 years previously in Berkeley, California, and his sponsor had been Dr. Earl, who wrote Physician, Heal Thyself in the Big Book. The young guy was short with curly red hair, and he played in an international rock band based out of Prague, each member of which was of a different nationality, and he talked of attending meetings throughout Europe while on tour. He wrote songs while riding the trams in Prague. We became friends. we were given a tour of his Prague. One of the many places we went to was the Louvre Café. As we ascended the stairs to the second landing, we noticed a portrait of the glass pyramid at the Louvre Museum in Paris, which reminded us of the AA triangle, with one side being unity. We had wanted to go to the billiards parlor, but it wasn't happening, so we sat in the main cafe. Mark had a senior moment and forgot which country he was in, so he greeted our waiter with "How you doing, senor?" While we sat in the pink room, Mark doodled on the stationery and had an epiphany, discovering the direction his art would go in Bali, where he was soon to travel to. Later that night, while having pizza at 1 a.m., we bumped into a girl who had been at the afternoon meeting. She was from Pittsburgh, but was living in Rome. She had gone to the opera with a guy from Venezuela who taught English in Prague, who had also been to the afternoon meeting. We all had a good laugh. So the first tradition was our goal in having invited the group out to say for a goodbye coffee. We felt disappointed not once, but twice, since we had really wanted to share some AA love and fellowship after the meeting. But as Mark put it the next morning, we never would have met the third guy if we hadn't had our hearts in the right place with the first two. It had all started with inviting the anniversary celebrant, who didn't even really want to celebrate his own anniversary, to go out with us. So that's what Mark and I learned about the first tradition in Prague that night. If we don't try extending the hand of AA to everybody and anybody, even those who don't want it, then we may not find those members who are willing to accept unity. So we start by loving everybody.